Welcome to Mortgage Solutions. I'm your host, Mark Rigney, and today we're going to talk to a certified general real estate appraiser with over 30 years experience appraising home in Fairfax County and surrounding areas. We are going to discuss past and future trends and values and things you can do to prepare to put your home on the market. Now, an appraisal is an estimate of the value of property usually required when it's being sold or financed. An appraiser will compare the price of the property to the prices of similar nearby properties that have sold recently. We are all very aware of what has happened to our market in Northern Virginia, and our guest appraiser, Bob O'Brien from O'Brien & Consultants, will give you tips that you can do to make your home ready for a visit from the appraiser to maximize its value. Hi, Bob, and thanks for being on the show.
Good to be here, Mark.
Bob, we're in the middle of this economic recession now. We're all very aware, but what has happened to our values in our homes in the past 4 years?
Well, going back to 2006, they've really skyrocketed downward. We had a recession kind of starting in 2006. It happened in some areas, not in others. For instance, values were dropping in some areas. Some areas they were stable. In some areas, like new construction, the values were still going up in late 2006.
Right now, we're in the middle of a housing crash. What are the future trends, in your opinion, what are the future trends that our viewers should expect to see over the next couple of years?
Well, what I've always seen, anytime we've had what we call a real estate recession, whether that be to high interest rates or other problems, I've always seen a pent-up demand that just comes out of the closet and comes forward. And by that I mean people that defer they don't have to sell and they don't have to buy. They deferred their plans. They deferred moving away. They deferred downsizing, upsizing. That usually eventually explodes. People can't handle it anymore, and they have to do what they intended to do 2, 3, 5 years earlier. You know.
So you're saying that they're going to be active and go out and try to find a home?
Almost guaranteed.
Now, these appraisals, they can be very confusing. There's a lot of information in these pages. When I provide an appraisal to a consumer, there's also numerous questions. What is the most confusing questions you get from a consumer? I mean, they see something in the appraisal, they don't quite understand it. What do they question most about appraisals?
Well, if you're talking about the typical residential appraisal.
Yes, I am.
The residential home, which is called the URAR, the Uniform Residential Appraisal Report. Probably, there are a lot of areas that people question. Some people nitpick through the whole thing and miss the big picture, you know, what's going on. But two of the areas I think are probably the most misleading. And I didn't design the form. It was designed many years ago. It's been improvised over the years. But what it is the room counts, where it says number of rooms, bedrooms, and baths. People say, hey, you missed the bathroom, you missed the bedroom. And typically what happens, if they read it very closely on the form, it says above grade room counts. Which means that doesn't include a basement.
So any bathrooms in the basement won't be included on that?
Not in those 3 boxes. On the back side of the page where the sales grids are with the comparable sales, it's listed below there. It says finished rooms below grade, and they missed that. That doesn't get put in the little boxes. That just puts in that one box. So that's why it's probably very confusing to people.
So you get a lot of questions on that. That's the one most important question you get from borrowers. Why isn't all my bedrooms and bathrooms being counted? Not
only are the questions, but sometimes people are irate that somehow you cheated them because you missed this bathroom or bedroom and whatever. And you know, to be honest, sometimes we do, but you know.
Now, we're all very aware of our values in the area. They seem to be depressed quite a bit. However, what I find very odd is that the assessments from the county seem to be very stable. They haven't mirrored what's happened with our values in our area. What role can an appraisal play in disputing the tax assessment from the county?
It can play a valuable role if it's properly applied by the right person. And by what that I mean, Fairfax County, you get your assessments January 1, say every year, 2010. City of Manassas, at Manassas Park, they get theirs July 1. They have an option in Virginia to pick either date, and that's what they do. So walking in there with an appraisal dated today, which is, you know, dated today, doesn't share the value that they share.
Right.
Their value is January 1. So if you have a declining market or whatever, they'll use the sales from the prior year. And to be honest with you, when it comes to commercial and other things like that, they go back several years to get values. If you have a townhouse subdivision where they have a lot of sales, it's another thing.
How many appraisals are you doing for clients today that want to dispute their tax assessment? Is that a big demand for you?
They're mainly commercial.
Mainly commercial.
I've
Not getting too many residential requests?
Well, I have one land thing in another county. It's just, it's a 5-acre parcel.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons that you don't get a lot of residential cases is that really it's get an attorney and an appraiser involved. And I think I ran the numbers that if you have a $300,000 assessment and you think it's worth $250,000, you're going to save $50,000. What does that equate to in tax? It's about $600, $700. It's not really.
Okay. All right. Now, since the housing crash, my industry, the mortgage industry, has been introduced with a lot of new regulations. Some of those regulations are called HVCC laws. Those are the laws govern the way lenders and communication with the appraisers. What is your take on the appraisal laws, and how has it affected the way you do your business?
Well, the residential part of our business, it's affected it a great deal. We're on short lists with some lenders where they just, look, we want these people approved, and we don't want any more. We're happy with them, we want them approved, and we have some way of picking them at random. Doesn't have anything to do with somebody wants this appraiser for this job.
Right. Yeah, it's a round robin type of thing. You don't, the lender can no longer select the appraisal. How do you feel about the accuracy of appraisals today, and maybe through this round robin system, appraisals brought in from the outside area, appraisers coming from the outside area to do appraisals in our area when they should have somebody more familiar with our area doing that appraisal?
Well, that's true. I mean, it's what they wanted to do is they wanted to keep the loan process separate from the appraisal process, and they didn't want somebody from the loan process to basically control the appraisal. But what's happened is that this has become such a profitable area. They've lowered our fees. They've charged management fees on top of the appraisal, and the lender owns the appraisal firm now. So it's the fox watching the hen house.
Oh, boy.
That's what it is. And they can say, well, the two of the biggest ones are LandSafe, which is owned by Bank of America, and then RELS, which is Wells Fargo. And they're saying, well, this is a totally separate department, but is it really?
Right.
I mean, if you complain loud enough through any corporate structure, you can get back down. So they're trying to separate the two, but I think that they've just created a bonanza for the lender to come in and take more of our fees and have a lower quality product at the end.
That's the key, a lower quality product. Right. These HVCC laws haven't added a whole lot to our policing of our industry, but they've made it a lot more difficult.
Well, they have too, and I think one of the things you had just mentioned, you mentioned about the assessments.
Exactly.
One of the things in the assessment process is totally different from the lending process. You would think, gee, an appraisal is an appraisal and appraisal, but if you're doing it for the lenders, they're telling you that you have to use these short sales and you have to use foreclosure sales and things of that nature. The county won't ignore that.
Why in the world do they take, this upsets a lot of people in our community. They have a nice neighborhood, the values are all up. One of their neighbors doesn't make their mortgage payments, the house gets foreclosed upon. The house is sold at foreclosure. When that house is sold at foreclosure, that drops everybody's value in the neighborhood because the appraiser, you, have to take that into consideration. Is that correct?
Some of the lenders are that way, and they direct you to do that. And the assessment process, they don't. They don't want to hear about the short sale.
So the assessments we get from the county, they don't talk about that.
They will
But
ignore it.
for the lenders, they have to take that into account.
And if you present something in court, an evaluation case, the court will ignore that. They will ignore something that's a bad sale. It's not an individual owner wanting to get the best that they can for their property in the sale.
So the only entity taking that into consideration is the real estate industry?
The lending industry.
The lending industry, if you will?
And some appraisers, I think, incorrectly believe that, well, I have to use these sales because they're the only thing there. Well, if they go back and they read the definition of market value, those lender, sellers, foreclosures are not legitimate sales.
Yeah, it seems to be very unfair to the consumer.
Right, and they say, well, if there's nothing else there, what do I use? They say, well, use your brain. That's what you need to do.
Right.
You need to go back when there weren't those kind of sales, and then you need to estimate the market decline, because there would be one.
Right.
But
What actually, coming from the horse's mouth, what actually goes into an appraisal? What determines the value of the property? What are the key factors that determine the value of a property in an appraisal?
The key factors?
Yes.
Well, I mean, basically, what we do is we inspect the property. We go out, and once we've calculated our footages and the room counts and whatever, and we go out and try to find sales that match that.
How prevalent does condition pay in the appraisal of the home?
It can make a lot of difference.
Okay. Do you have any tips for our viewers that they can do to increase the value of their home?
Well, I want to, you know, I'm a realtor too, as well as an appraiser.
Wonderful, that's perfect.
I've been a broker for a long time, and I know that there's a difference between what you asked me about what can they do to get their value at a higher level,
right,
versus what will increase saleability.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the things that a lot of realtors do, well, I mean, they're two good things. We just need to differentiate between the two of them. And it depends if you've got an escalating market or, you know, a market that's declining.
Okay.
Like what's going to increase the value? You know, you know, I think there's a difference between those two levels. But I think that unless you are correcting a problem,
okay,
what you're spending
give an example, an illustration of a problem you're talking about.
Suppose you have a basement full of water.
Okay.
I mean, people walk in and say, wow, an in-ground pool under my basement, you know? You know?
Not exactly, but okay.
I'm laughing because I know some people in a place in Maryland where it's very prevalent they have this, and they're smaller homes. And when the market was vibrant 5, 6 years ago, they were basically able to fix any basement over there for $5,000 to $10,000. They had their waterproofing crews and whatever. What did they get off the value? $40,000, $50,000, what the value was. So it was a way they could come in and they could make money doing this.
So are you saying that improvements to the home do not necessarily mean a dollar for dollar increase in the value of the property?
That's correct. Now the builder is going to tell you something different.
What's the builder going to say?
He's going to say every diamond I'm spending on this house, we just add them all up, and whatever that costs, that's what it's worth.
Like if we add a new deck, the $10,000 I put in the deck is going to increase the value of the home $10,000. But that's not actually the case.
Right. It's gotten to the point that the builder, a lot of builders now won't build the deck. They'll say go to someone else and get it built. They can do it cheaper than we can.
Is that right?
They will tell them that. But the other thing is if, you know, you say a basement full of water, or suppose you had mold all over your house. Suppose just your carpets were really just terrible.
Okay.
You know, being the realtor, we've done this. You put the property on the market, and you say, well, we'll give you a carpet allowance. This is real simple.
Right.
I mean, people get grossed out. They don't even want to. They can't envision. They don't have the imagination to envision it with the carpet. You know, they don't. So, are you spending the money? You need to fix the problems, is what you need to do.
Even if it's cosmetic, ugly carpet, gross countertops, things of that nature, off-colored countertops, bathrooms need to be updated. If they would do those types of things, that will increase the value of the home. Updating, you're saying. Updating and restoring to original condition?
Now, the other things, I think when you make improvements to your home, I think what you need to do, if you're prudent, you need to think, am I in this for the long term? In other words, I'm going to live here 5, 6, 7 years down the road. If I want a deck, I'll build it for my own enjoyment. I don't need to hear that my value went up.
Right. So that shouldn't be the motivation for making the improvement, for the increase in the value, just be for their own comforts.
And there'll be a million people disagreeing with, oh, I know how to fix the house up. What you do is you fix the problems.
You fix the problems.
Maybe a little nick in the counter isn't that big of a deal.
Right.
I just remember an old realtor from Bethesda that basically told me that when I got into the business, she told me that she sold one house 4 times. She listed it